Aloha, my name is Kate Ryder, and I'm going to talk to you about water brushes. So, water brushes are these great inventions that allow you to store water in the handle of the brush instead of having to have a separate container that you might knock over or that you have to bring in your backpack or fill up. So, they're just a lot more convenient when you're trying to do something with watercolors or watercolor pencils. So there's two different brands that I recommend. If you're just buying for yourself, I like this is the Pentel brand. I have one big and one small size brush. Different size brushes allow you to have different amount of paint, different amount of water on your paper. Not really necessary. You can just go with a medium and pretty much do everything you want with it. If you're in a classroom or trying to do for a bunch of people, then you would probably want to use the Mr. Pen. It's the best brand and the cheapest that I've found on Amazon. It's a big 12 pack. Again, each student or participant in your workshop or family member probably is going to want to have a small and either a medium or a large size to have kind of that variation. But again, not super necessary. You can just use one each. To use a water brush, you need to fill up this handle, right? And so you have to untwist the handle from the brush part. Sometimes it's a little confusing the first time you do it. A lot of times it's threaded in a way that's not obvious, so kind of twist it gently both ways until you figure out how to open it up. If you have a sink available, then just fill it up at the sink. I don't, and a lot of times when I'm teaching classes at events, I also don't have a sink. So what I'll do is I'll have a jar of water. I know, but not everybody has to have the jar of water, so it's easier. And then I take this is a oral syringe from my daughter's, liquid Tylenol when she was a baby. I've saved all of them. They've come in use in all sorts of ways. So I put it into the jar. I pull up the plunger until it's full of water. And then I take the handle and then I just squeeze it in and it fills it right up. Then I screw this top back on and I take the lid off. Now you're ready to go. So now that you have your brush filled up with water, the first thing that you're going to want to do is to wake up the brush and make sure it's working. You're going to need some sort of rag or paper towel to use as a rinse and clean for your brush. So it's a good idea to get that to start with. So either a paper towel, a rag, or what I like to use is the cuff of an old sock. It just fits on your wrist and then it doesn't go flying. You have it all the time. So to wake it up and to get it started, I'm going to just gently squeeze the handle until it starts to drip. I don't know if you can see that. Yep, there you go. You can kind of just see that little bit of a drip coming down. There we go. And so now my brush is wet and I know that this water brush is working. With the cheaper ones, it's not always guaranteed, but it's okay. You get 12 per pack, so you've got a lot of chances. So now that it's a week, I can start doing some painting. So if I'm using watercolor pencils and I just want to draw a leaf, I'm going to just take my green pencil and I'm going to just draw a really quick leaf on here. This is just a demonstration. And then I might just gently and lightly color it in the inside. I don't want to color it in really heavy because you're putting down a lot of paint and color then, and there's kind of nowhere for it to go when you add the water. You're going to see what I mean in a minute. You can also layer on different colors. If I think this green is too dark, I can add on another layer of color right there. Then I'm going to take my water brush and I'm going to squeeze it gently and wipe it onto the paper. I'm going to also make sure I go all the way to the edge and I get that outline in on the party here and get some of that good color coming in. See, it blends it all nicely. You are going to notice that unless you're really, really, really careful about the way that you put down those lines, you're going to still see some lines underneath. That's okay. You know, we're not trying to be perfect. You can also use those to your advantage if there's a certain type of texture or pattern you kind of want on your leaf. But mostly, you know, in nature journaling, it doesn't have to be perfect. You're just trying to get the general shape, color, idea, concept down onto your paper. So now my brush tip is a little bit green, and so I got to rinse it off. So I'm going to squeeze it again until it starts to drip, and then wipe it off onto either my wrist cup, my rag, or, you know, your paper towel too. And you want to make sure that it's clean before you start on your next color. Otherwise, it's going to get all messy. These do kind of stay dyed once you get any kind of color on them. They don't stay this pure white, and that's okay. You can just, that's why you should always kind of blot it on something light colored, just to make sure that there's no more ink left in this. All right, or watercolor left really on that brush tip. The other thing is, if you're going to be using a set of like traditional watercolors, you're going to want to start by squeezing again, and you can kind of get a little bit of water into your well where the dried watercolors are, and just let it sit for a second and let it kind of wake up, let that water interact with the paint to make that watercolor paint, right? So we got water and we're coloring. So a reminder, if you're using paints, is that watercolor is very different than acrylic or tempera paint. It's not, you're not trying to like scoop out the paint and put it onto the paper. You're actually just trying to pick up almost like a dye and trying to soak it up into the brush and then put that down onto the paper. One thing you want to be really careful about when you're putting a watercolor brush into paint is you don't want to squeeze and then put the brush down and then let go, because what's going to happen is it's going to work like a syringe. It's going to work like this syringe, and it's going to soak up the colored water, and that colored water is going to go into the handle here, and then everything you paint after that is going to be partly that color. So that's just something to be thoughtful about, is when you're putting your brush in, you're not squeezing. You're just dipping it into kind of the wet part until you get a little bit of paint on your brush, and then you're painting onto your page. So, and again, now you can really see that the brush is loaded with some color here, and I'm gonna need to rinse it off onto here. So I'm squeezing and I'm wiping, and I'm squeezing and I'm wiping until it's running clear. And when I'm wiping it, I don't see any more color. So that's how you use a watercolor brush. When you're done with them, if you are going to be using it again sometime soon, you can leave that water in the handle. If it's going to be a while and it's going to be sitting around, especially here in Hawaii, I would recommend unscrewing it and dumping out all the water and leaving it with the cap off and in 3 separate parts. That's so that it doesn't get moldy. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out and contact me. Kate Ryder, kateryder.com, info@kateryder.com. I'm Kate Ryder on Instagram. All right, hope to hear from you soon. Hope this was helpful. Take care.